know who done it. Arrest her.
You can bet she's been planning this since the day she married him.
Hold on. Now, hold it. Just calm down now. Why don't you people go home? As far as we know, it's just an accident. We all know old Ed was getting along. Now, maybe he just rode in from the county seat after shopping. It was dark when he got here. He lit a lantern and had a heart attack, a stroke or something.
Or been murdered.
You wait till election. You see who'll have a stroke.
Martha Rowell, I arrest you for the murder of your husband.
You must know I wouldn't kill my husband. How can you believe that I did?
I believe it, lady.
My conscience is clear, Sheriff B. May God help yours.
With me and pick the winners at Auntie Skinner's Chicken Dinner. Da-dum, da-dum, bum, bum, bum. Hey, Mr. Dundee, gotta wake up. We're in town.
Wide awake, Culhane, and with a very bad response to the salutation, hey.
I thought you were asleep.
No, just resting my eyes. Are we in front of that greenhouse yet?
Just about.
See those pickets out of the fence by the gate there?
They are. You've been here.
See the general store?
Yeah.
Is that dog black and white? The dog there near the elderly man. Answers to the name of Chippy, I'll wager.
How would you know?
Right here by the sheriff's office, Culhane. My, that saloon's awfully quiet this time of day.
Oh, I've got it.
Never been here before in my life. Now, you're not in the presence of a mystic, Culhane, just wisdom. You see, the eye of youth doesn't see repetition. Now, the older eye doesn't want to see it, but it does everywhere. Everything I've described, we've seen in every single town we've ever entered together.
And how'd you know the pickets are out of that fence?
Pickets are out in every town. I smelled the saloon. I knew for convenience sake that the sheriff's office would be next door to it. Now then, what's our client's name?
Martha Rowell. Husband's name was Ed Rowell, burned to death at the age of 74, and she's only...
Oh, yes, the young wife. I take it all back, Culhane. I am a mystic. I shall look right through those walls and describe her to you. I see a cold, shallow type with the manners of a dance hall girl, Old Ed Rowell took her out of the chorus in a rinky-tink saloon. Didn't fit in with the local society. Bad speech, bad manners, bad dress. Grew impatient when he didn't push on in his assigned 10, did him in.
Well, you don't know that. And if we're here to defend her, and we think she's guilty, she doesn't stand a chance.
And defend her we shall, Culhane, to the very best of our ability, as we always do. But that doesn't stop us having our own personal private opinion, does it? The eye of wisdom. Oh, and Culhane, the sheriff's name is Bean. Sheriff Bean.
Oh, you're tired of it. Well, you listen to me, Merle Bean. As long as she's locked up in there, you're going to find me here plenty.
Now, you get out of here. I mean that.
You don't fool me. She'll coil up to you with her nicely nice manners, and you won't know what hit you.
That's enough. That's enough. Now, one more word I'm warning you shall help me, you're going to get it.
Just a minute, Sheriff, please. This woman doesn't have to take that kind of treatment. You may think her manner tasteless, her speech tawdry, her whole attitude vulgar, but she is innocent until proven guilty. And she is entitled to courteous, decent treatment.
Who the devil are you?
My name is Dundee. I'm this woman's defense attorney, and this is my associate, Mr. Culhane.
You're that woman's defense attorney. This woman here's my wife.
My deepest apologies, madam. And to you, sir, Sheriff Bean. May I please confer with my client?
All right.
In private, please.
Just close the door to the cells. There ain't nobody else back there.
Thank you, Sheriff. Culhane?
Mr. Dundee, I'm Martha Rowell. I can't tell you how anxious I've been for this moment.
How do you do, Mrs. Rowell? This is my associate, Mr. Culhane.
How do you do?
Mrs. Rowell, in heaven's name, why didn't you contact us sooner?
I wasn't allowed to. Guess the sheriff didn't want to give us enough time to prepare an adequate defense. He's running for mayor.
But what has the election to do with you?
Oh, my conviction would assure a victory. The sheriff could put me on the rack first or provide a little boiling oil. It would be a landslide.
Mrs. Rowell, now, please tell us all you can.
I suppose they can't help it. It's a natural resentment.
What is?
I embarrassed them.
But how?
Difference in tastes, books, clothes. Upbringing, I suppose, Mr. Dundee.
Mrs. Rowell, your husband, he was,
74. I'll spare you the embarrassment of asking the next question. Why would I marry a man so much older than myself? Security, of course. And companionship.
Well, not the usual motivation for a young girl.
Perhaps that was because I was not a young girl, Mr. Dundee. I was 28.
Just being cautious.
Just being trapped. When I was a little girl, my father used to say, Martha, I'm king now, and that makes you my princess. And he took me to Europe when I was 18. I remember one morning at breakfast in the dining room in a beautiful hotel in Paris. Somebody brought him a cablegram, and he shuddered as though it had announced death.
And, did it?
The king was dead.
Long live the king.
Just like that, Mr. Dundee. The rivers flooded, the rice crop failed, and he was broke. There wasn't even enough money to get home. The American embassy provided our passage. For the next 10 years, we pretended that there would be a return of the monarchy.
You stayed with your father until you married.
Till my father died. Of heartbreak, alcohol, cheap lodgings, and false hope. Still my princess, Martha, he used to ask. And he'd hand me my mirror or my brush, and he'd say, "This is your scepter. With it, we'll reign again." His hand trembled so that he could barely hold it.
You, married soon after your father's death?
Soon? 2 months. It was the first time in all these years that I could look forward to more than a week to where the food would come from, the rent money. I do despise self-pity, gentlemen. I apologize.
No need, Mrs. Rao. No need at all. You married a prosperous small-town man, and that small town hates you for it.
Yes, he was a widower. His wife could neither read nor write, but the whole town loved her.
If Mr. Rowell had been poor, I think they'd have all loved you. Taste, books, and all.
Mrs. Rowell, how do you wish to plead?
Gentlemen, if I appear to you to be a murderess, perhaps you'd better not take this case.
Please, Mrs. Rowell, what Mr. Culhane really means is that sometimes it's wiser to plead guilty and concentrate on the reasons for clemency.
I won't tell you that I loved Ed Rowell. I'm not even certain that I liked him. But he gave me what I married him for. Days without anxiety. Would I kill a man who made me that gift? My husband had gone into the county seat for the day and was late. The sheriff had been by at about 6 o'clock looking for him. And then I took a rest and I must have fallen asleep. It must have been 2 or 3 hours later when I heard him call. How long he'd been calling, I've no idea. Just as I looked out the window, there was a roar and a flame billowed up very high. Perhaps if I'd have awakened a few seconds earlier.
All right, Miss Rowell, lunchtime, let's go.
3 times a day, I march down the street to the cafe to be fed, Mr. Dundee. If you don't come out and watch, you'll get a reputation for yourselves as being nonconformists.
Let's go, huh?
I'll wait for you, Mrs. Rowell. Why don't you nose around town this afternoon, Culhane? Try and get a line on some of the prospective jurors, eh? Keep your ear open.
The year of youth, Mr. Dundee. Very perceptive.
You know, either she's the most consummate prevaricator I've ever seen, or this is the cruelest little town I've ever been in.
All right, Tippy.
And then I heard before Martha Rowell come here with old Ed, she fancy pantsed around with a whole lot of well-to-doings. But Ed showed her his bank book, and she said, "I do." She didn't know it was only for deposits, not withdrawals.
Can't you find what you're looking for, Mrs. Gatsby?
Well, why don't you drop back later? Maybe we can find it then.
Wouldn't you love to see her face when she first seen that old run-down place, Ed? She thought she was marrying into a mansion.
What are you talking about?
Poor old Ed. All his money was tied up in cash.
You want something, mister?
Just looking.
Let me tell you another funny thing about old Ed.
All right, you old bozo, out.
When Will Hopkins had this store,
He wanted to be a place where you old geezers would buy something, not just talk. Now, listen, you're wheezing all day, and I'm sick of it. Now, get out.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, now, look here, mister. I don't need nobody to help me run my store. Do you drink?
Occasionally. I couldn't help overhearing. Do you know the Rowell woman?
Everybody knows Mrs. Rowell.
The stories they tell about her, are they true?
I don't know.
I hear they got a tight case.
I hear they got a tight election.
You mean to tell me this town will convict her even if she's proven innocent?
Sheriff Bean doesn't think she's going to be proved innocent.
You think she's going to be proved innocent?
Yeah, I think so.
What makes you think that?
Well, I just think so.
Well, it's probably not so bad a town after all.
This town is mean and rotten and small and filthy and ignorant, dumb, dull, and not very profitable.
How come you stay here?
Well, I won this place in a card game. Before that, I was a blacksmith. This is easier. Beside that, previous owner didn't make full use of his contacts.
Then you are going to stay here?
Well, pretty soon maybe something better will come along. You never know.
Well, it happens pretty soon. Another card game.
Jimmy Joe, what you doing there, boy? Get this mess cleaned up.
Tell me more about the Rowell woman. You seem mighty sure that she's going to get off. What makes you feel that?
Now you're pushing my hospitality, mister.
Maybe you know her pretty well.
Afternoon, Mr. Hobbs.
Afternoon, Miss Watkins. I'll be right with you.
I can't thank you enough for helping me look through your store. Got a lot of nice things.
Who are you?
I'm here to see that Mrs. Rowell is found innocent.
Well, you better get at it, mister. It's so nice of you to drop by, Mrs. Watkins.
Sorry, Jimmy Joe.
But what do they have, Mrs. Rowell? What real evidence?
That's what frightens me, Mr. Dundee. They have nothing. Absolutely nothing. A woman's mirror and a latch.
But surely the sheriff must believe that he has something, Witnesses to a quarrel between yourself and your husband, perhaps. No, you're not the quarrelsome sort. But do you really believe it's possible that they would hang you? Actually hang you because you enjoy advantages they lack? They'd hang you for being different?
Ride to the west of town, Mr. Dundee. The graveyard. You'll find a marker there with the name Emeralda Velasquez, which is carefully weeded. It's one of the few that is. They feel guilty now. They hanged her 4 years ago for the murder of her husband, and they couldn't even find the body.
Why?
Because she couldn't speak English. Most of them can't read it or write it, but she couldn't speak it. Capital crime.
Without any evidence?
Nothing that would hold water anywhere else. And by the way, her husband rode into town 3 days later.
Nice people.
I'm frightened, Mr. Dundee. I know that I don't look the type, but I'm frightened.
Of course you are, Mrs. Rowan. Of course you are. But I tell you this. I'm going to give this case all the strength I possess. Every recourse I have will be directed towards your acquittal.
Then you do believe that I'm innocent?
I believe you'll never be found guilty in any real court of law. Tell me, Mrs. Rowan, has there ever been anybody for whom you felt, well, you lived with your father a long time, and as you say, you married for security. Has there ever been anybody for whom...
Please believe that I'm innocent.
Like I told you, not worth the trip out here. That was a fire.
Well, I don't know exactly what we're looking for, Culhane. But I simply can't get it through my head that the sheriff's going to walk into that courtroom with nothing more convincing than a woman's hand mirror. You know, if we can't get an acquittal on a flimsy premise like that one, we ought to be disbarred. Even from a potty, angry, rumor-ridden, jealous little place like this one.
How do we really know that wasn't her mirror?
We don't know, of course, but I believe her when she says that she's innocent. And I also believe that the reason for this whole sad business is her very obvious superiority to everybody else in this town. They don't know her, so they don't like her. She has a very rare quality, Culhane. One doesn't often find it.
I don't know. There's another level to a woman like that. Sometimes I look at her and, it's not easy to say, but even though you're the one that she talks to and respects, I'd be the one who,
I think you're mistaken, Culhane. And I have a few more years of character judgment to my credit than you have. Mrs. Rowell is a truly splendid woman.
I told you it was just a feeling. I could be wrong, of course.
Well, you are wrong. Looks like a strong box.
Probably filled with $100 bills. Those old codgers always bury their money. Yes, sir. Probably everything he had in the world right there in that box. Thousands and thousands.
Yeah. Well, for heaven's sake, open it. Membership of Caribou Lodge, local chapter, Western Farmers Seed Planting Guide. You were right, Culhane. Positive treasure. Hey, bank book. That looks a bit more interesting. And, IOUs. Well, it looks as if old Ed backed about every enterprise around here. Most of them are paid, too. Put them back here and we'll go through this lot later, eh? Let's get back. Culhane, you know, you carry these sort of things much more gracefully than I do.
I would have betted hell a fortune. I wish it did, just to see it.
Well, it might have been all in silver. Then what would I have done with a partner with a broken back? Watch your step.
Yes, master. Good luck, Mr. Dundee.
Good luck to you, Mr. Culhane. Now we shall find out what this little town is really made of.
Your Honor, the case the prosecution plans to present to this jury...
Your Honor, I must protest the flagrant use of this courtroom as a political arena. It's just not cricket, sir.
Overruled.
No more questions, Your Honor.
I'll take this one, you take the next one. Now, Elvira, you stated that you heard Mr. and Mrs. Rowell quarreling in the kitchen. Now, will you please tell the court what the dispute was all about? Nothing? But it must have been about something. Tell us. Elvira, the sheriff wants to establish a motive. He wants us to know that the Rowells had such vicious battles that murder was inevitable. Elvira, wasn't the quarrel over your discharge as a cleaning woman in Mrs. Rowell's home?
Yes.
And wasn't the quarrel in question based upon Mr. Rowell's demand that you leave without a week's severance pay? And on Mrs. Rowell's equally firm assertion that you be given that week's pay?
Yes.
A quarrel concerning your discharge for eating more than you're worth to them in services. Hardly a murder motive. Thank you, Elvira.
Harry Tilgy to the stand. No more questions.
On your marks, Culhane.
That was the case then, wasn't it, Mr. Tilgy? When old Ed Rowell told you if he didn't get home, all Hades would break loose. He just could have meant his wife was waiting for supper, couldn't he?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tilgy, you're under oath. Have you ever used the expression, I'd better get home or all Hades will break loose?
Yes, I have.
Excuse.
Your Honor, I feel that this sham has gone on long enough. We've been treated to Sheriff Bean's pre-election sampler, which we all know to be a ridiculous hoax. This woman, who I've come to know as a fine woman, has suffered enough for the crime of simply being different. Your Honor, I must ask you for an immediate dismissal, not just for this lady, but for the whole town. For the honor of this town. What are you all doing to yourselves? Is any election worth this joke? And now the deputy is going to present you with an extraordinary climax to this joke. He's going to show you a mirror. And because it happens to be a woman's mirror, he's going to suggest that that is reason enough to hang the handiest woman, Mrs. Martha Rowell. Your Honor, I beg of you, spare your community further humiliation. Dismiss this case.
Your Honor. Your Honor, that's all just fine. Just fine. But I didn't plan to show you no mirror next. No, sirree, I ain't gonna show you no mirror. But I do want to show you this brush. Now, you see, Your Honor, this brush was taken off of Mrs. Rowell's dressing table just as we arrested her. It goes with this here mirror. All the same set. Her set.
Your Honor, I request a recess so that I may confer with my client. Do you realize the seriousness of this development?
I didn't know they had that brush.
Why didn't you tell me about it? Why didn't you tell me there was a brush as well as a mirror?
It was a gift from someone I didn't want you to know about. Didn't want anybody to know about.
Hobbs.
Yes. You need only believe that the man bothered me on several occasions, both when I went into town to the store and at home when my husband was gone. He was very firmly rejected, Mr. Dundee. You must know that.
Yes, but why should you accept a gift from such a man?
He sent it by way of a boy. The boy wouldn't return it. Said Hobbs would fire him. I couldn't take it back, certainly.
Your husband could have brought them back.
Not them, Mr. Culhane. It. Hobbs sent me a brush, not a mirror. Now, he would testify to that. I'm absolutely certain.
Well, if that's the case, we've absolutely nothing to worry about. If you never had the mirror, we're safe. You see, Mrs. Rowell, Culhane and I are rather sensitive to any surprises during a trial.
No more surprises. I couldn't tell my husband about the brush. He might have misunderstood.
Well, the jury won't misunderstand. You ready, Mrs. Rowell? Mr. Hobbs, will you answer that question once more? Did you or did you not give a mirror with a picture back like this one to Mrs. Martha Rowell?
I just give her the brush part.
You're under oath, Mr. Hobbs. To whom did you give the mirror part? Answer the question, Mr. Hobbs.
I don't know. I don't know because I give a bunch of them away.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Now, tell me, Jimmy Joe, when you delivered the box containing the brush to Mrs. Martha Rowell, did Mr. Hobbs give you any special instructions?
Yes, sir. To be darn sure she's seen the price tag.
The price tag?
Yes, sir. He put one in all of them. And it'd say $6, $7, you know, like that.
The price tag?
Yes, sir. And I was supposed to say something like, "Golly, lady, you ain't supposed to see that."
So the sets weren't very expensive?
No, sir. They were $1.60 both. That's 80 cents each.
By golly, so it is. Oh, Jimmy, thank you. Deputy? Well, you can go back to your seat, Jimmy. Thank you. Gentlemen of the jury, I would like to know that on the evidence presented thus far in this case, that you would bring in a resounding verdict of not guilty for my client. But I have no such confidence. I believe that if I were to rest on the defense my partner and I have provided up to now, you would hang Martha Rowell with the greatest glee. Sheriff Bean would triumph at the polls, and your town would march on to a golden tomorrow of even greater injustice, stupidity, and prejudice. You would kill Martha Rowell simply because you are fearful and suspicious of her. She is guilty of the heinous crime of simply being different. How close she has come to the gallows. As close as the heel of a boot. A heel that dug into a cash box containing some very interesting papers. Now, quite a few of you will recognize these. Those of you who borrowed money from Ed Rowell, that is. The defense calls Sheriff Merle Bean to the stand. Now, I would like you to identify this signature for me. Is this your signature? Your signature, Sheriff Bean. I owe you $400, Merle Bean. I owe you $250, Merle Bean. I owe $500, Merle Bean. Now, there are several more. Well, campaigning seems to have become rather expensive, hasn't it, Sheriff Bean? Now, you see, none of these IOUs with your signature are marked paid. Just how much money did Ed Rowell loan you?
A lot of people borrowed money from Ed Rowell, mister.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure they did. But here's one you wrote out just 2 days before the fire. And in Ed Rowell's handwriting, right across the top, it says, rejected. Did he cut you off in the middle of the campaign? Just when your bar bill at the saloon was up around the $300 mark, And your bills for other favors, round about $250? Just when you were merrily buying vote after vote in this corrupted town, old Ed Rowell refused you further credit. Sheriff, did you go to the Rowell house at about 6 p.m. on the night of the fire?
Yeah, I did.
Did you see Mrs. Rowell?
I did.
What was she doing when she answered your knock?
What does that mean?
What was she doing?
I don't remember.
She was brushing her hair. She was brushing her hair with a brush with a picture back like the one you'd seen in your own home. A brush from Hobbs. Like the mirror Hobbs had given to your wife. There was no way you might have known Mrs. Rowell only had the brush, was there, Sheriff? When you went home for your wife's mirror for that barn door latch, you thought you'd found a murder weapon that was certain to point to Mrs. Rowell. You believed you'd wiped out all your debts by killing old Ed Rowell, and at the same time, you could ensure your election as mayor by successfully prosecuting the town's most unpopular citizen.
Dundee! Sheriff!
jury reached its verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
The defendant will rise. We, the jury, do find the defendant, Mrs. Martha Rowell, of the crime of murder, not guilty.
Well, Mrs. Rowell, you're a free woman.
Only because of you, Mr. Dundee.
May I escort you home?
I would so much like to, but I know you'll understand. I do need to be alone.
Of course I understand. Perhaps I'll see you later.
Thank you, Mr. Culhane.
Well, I guess I was wrong about her. Now I can tell you, there were a few times there. Once the way she looked at the grocer.
Just shows how wrong one can be about people, Culhane. Why don't you join me in a toast to truth? That saloon is becoming impatient. You know, I was just thinking, Culhane, why don't we stay here for a few days? I'd rather like to have a chat with Mrs. Rowell now that the pressure's off, and you could,
Why, Mr. Dundee, I believe you're attracted to the widow Rowell.
She didn't waste a minute. She come right out of that court, went right down to the bank, and took all the old Ed's money right out. Now look, she's fixing to leave right now.
Mrs. Rowell?
I left your payment in an envelope with the clerk in the back.
You're leaving? Without even going home?
There's nothing for me here. You can understand that.
That thing's full already, and we still have 3 more bags. Well there, barrister. See? She was found not guilty, just like I told you.
Mr. Hobbs is selling the store. That's right, Mr. Dundee. I never met a man like Hobbs the whole time I was caring for my drunken father. Princess doesn't consort with men like that. And then I came here, and it was like living with my father all over again, Mr. Dundee. So I decided to meet a different kind of man.
Indeed, Mrs. Rowell. The difficulty in life is always the choice. And the difficulty in this case is whether you are experienced enough to make that choice.
Well, we're all set. Move over.
Gentlemen, Mr. Hobbs and I can't thank you both enough. Goodbye. I said goodbye, Mr. Dundee. I said goodbye.
Well?
I'm not going.
What are you talking about?
I'm sorry I can't. As long as someone really believes in me. I'm sorry, I can't. Forgive me. Thank you. They're not very adequate words. Thank you.
Well, how about that drink?
Culhane, that is a simply splendid idea.
Didn't need to shoot. We were stopping. We wanted somebody to look good when Senor